Carhadaras the Cruel was the mountain in Lord of the Rings that gave us that iconic moment of "Fly, you fools," because the mountain itself sent horrifying weather because it was an angry, angry mountain. Hello and welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds. Today I would like to discuss animism. How I'm going to break down today's topic is transcendence and its relationship to animism and what that means for the development of your culture, what the impact is of animism on magic, what the impact is of the proliferation of spirits due to animism on your culture and your world, what is an inclusive religion like animism and what impact does that have on your spirituality, and finally, I will give you some quick steps for creating an animistic spirit. Before we get into it, if you'd like this kind of content, please do hit the like button. If you really like this kind of content, you can head over to ko-fi.com justintimeworlds and buy me a cup of coffee. Really appreciate the support. Okay, let's get into it. Animism is when a world is full of spirits, but they are not in their own spiritual realm. They are actually here in the same world as people inhabit. And they are not spiritual entities that use things about the real world. They are those things. The difference is most ably explained by taking a god of thunder. So Thor is the Norse god of thunder. He uses thunder, right? But he isn't the thunder. Röodin is the kami of thunder from the Sintao religion. And he is the thunder. Every time there's a thunderclap, that is Röodin. And that's the big difference between animism and, say, polytheism. In animism, you have no transcendence. Your spirits, your gods, your kami are in this world and of this world. They are not in a separate realm where they have transcended to. They are here and part of the world. Well, what difference does that make? You could very well ask. Ghost of Tsushima does a great job of using that lack of transcendence in the side quest of the foxes. So I'm going to give you a little bit of context here so that you can understand what the game did. In Ghost of Tsushima, you play a Japanese samurai, and the island that you live on, the island of Tsushima, is overrun by Mongols. You have these little foxes that guide you to shrines, and at those shrines you perform this ritual where you clap your hands and then you get additional charm slots where you can put charms in that buff your character. There's a side quest that you get where these little foxes come to you and one of their foxes has been hurt. And it's kind of like a is Lassie down the well situation, because the fox comes to you and you have to follow them and find the fox that was hurt and then get vengeance by killing the Mongols who hurt the fox. But the whole thing is possible because foxes are sacred to Inari and they are considered to be kami in their own right. Not that they are inhabited by the spirit of kami, not that there is a god of foxes for whom they are messengers. They are kami. They are the fox spirits in the flesh, because that's how animism works. And that lack of transcendence allows you to really play with that concept of it's not just that you are hurting a fox, you're hurting a spirit. It makes it a very intimate, very real sense in terms of your spirituality. Let's say you're hunting and you kill a deer. Now, you have to kill the deer to eat, so, it's an acceptable form, but you would have a ritual associated with thanking the deer for giving up its spirit so that you could eat. And that brings me to the impact of that proliferation of spirits and the proliferation of rituals associated with that spirit. So if you think about it, I just spoke about the deer and killing them and having a ritual to thank the deer for giving up their life. But if you think about it in context of, say, every river has its spirit, what happens if you don't go through the ritual for that particular river? Does your boat get dumped? What if you're on an ocean and the spirit of the ocean becomes angry? Do you encounter a whirlwind? What if it's a mountain like Karadaras that sends this foul weather to, knock you off it? If you have animism in your world and it's all real, you are likely to have a proliferation of rituals that are all about ensuring that the spirits don't get angry. Because otherwise, you run the risk of, getting your boat thrown over, getting yourself tossed off a mountain, having all the game leave the area where your tribe hunts because they're all angry with what you've done. These rituals would likely to be short and easy to perform, something like clapping your hands at a shrine or throwing a cup of salt over the side of a boat. Something which is simple to perform and can be done quickly because you don't have all day to perform long, intricate rituals. But there would be a lot of them. The interesting thing about animism and all of those rituals is that it's also likely to lead to a fairly unorganized religion. So while you might have shrines, it's unlikely to have a huge overarching organization. And the reason why is, again, that proliferation of spirits. If there's so many spirits, if you have a disagreement with somebody about doctrine or about what the spirits say, it's perfectly possible for both people to be right. Because there are so many spirits, surely there is one that says what you wanted to say. And if you have a problem, you can just move along to that spirit. It's also interesting to look at the impact that animism has on magic. So you can use animism as a source for magic, and in the Legend of the Five role-playing game, this is how it works. The Shugenja, who are your mages, are also priests, and they pray to the kami, and then the kami grant their requests for magic. So if they want a fireball, they would say a prayer to the fire kami, and that would then manifest as flames. So you can use those animistic spirits as the source of your magic and then importune them to do what you want through ritual. That's not the only impact it has, though. I spoke about Karadras, and it is an example of genius loci, spirit of place. In the Harry Dresden books, Dresden gets this island that he calls Demon Reach, that is inhabited by such a genius loci, such a spirit of place. And while he is on the island, because he binds himself to that spirit, while he is on the island, he can sense the whole island, and it feeds his power while he is there. That's also a very interesting way to deal with your magic in an animistic setting where you have access to animism. You can literally bind those spirits into your mage, and by doing so give your mage a power-up. Animism as a religion is a very inclusive religion. So I spoke earlier about there being spirits enough for everyone, but it also actually plays well with straight up different religions. The stats of Japan show that many people in Japan consider themselves to be both Buddhist and Shinto. What does that kind of inclusivity mean for your story, though? It means that animism can coexist with another religion very well. And it means that you can have, say, monotheism with a host of spirits acting as the god. Or you could have some kind of spiritual path to enlightenment while at the same time having all of the animistic spirits available to you. Okay, so that's all about animism, but how do you actually create animistic spirits? So the way that I like to do it when I'm creating animistic spirits is, first, you need to decide what the spirit actually is. Remember, it's not transcendent. So it's a mountain spirit, or the mountain spirit, or a mountain ranger spirit, or it's a river spirit, then you need to think about what makes that spirit mad, what makes it sad, and what makes it glad. And what I mean by that is there should be something that enrages the spirit. So if it's a river spirit, for example, it could perhaps become enraged if you dump sewage in it. And it could become sad if you bury a body in it. And it could become glad if you add leaves to it that would allow the fish that inhabit the river to feed. And those three things then become part of a ritual to the river. So maybe to traverse the river properly, you need to carry some specific kind of leaves on you that you spread on the river so that the fish can feed, and that allows you to safely travel on the river. But how do you know what makes the river mad, sad, and glad? And that brings me to the last thing that you need to think about animistic spirits, is how do they communicate? Is it a case of, is Lassie down the well, Timmy, the little fox is barking and saying, follow me? Or maybe it can communicate through elemental roars. Maybe it communicates with specific people, shamans or shugenja, magic users who call on that animistic spirit and draw that dialogue out of them. And that, in a nutshell, is animism and how to use it in a fantasy setting. I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode. Please do hit the like button, consider subscribing, and if you really enjoyed the content, buy me a cup of coffee. My name is Marie Mullaney, and this has been Just in Time Worlds.